Time for webinar number 2. I will try to explain what argumentative essays should include and what the PEE chain stands for. We will start off with the PEE chain because there are a few of you that have heard about it. The first P stands for point. That means that you sum up the main idea of that specific paragraph, and it should be connected to your thesis statement, of course. Then you provide evidence for the point that you're making. That's the E. Example, evidence. And then you refer to the book. You can use a quote or you can find information someplace else. Never ever refer to yourself. And then you come to the final E, the explanation. That is where you can get a high grade because it shows that you can explore, explain, and understand. So you explain, why is the quotation significant? What effect does the quotation have on the reader? And why has the writer used this specific technique? It shows, it implies, and you do not refer to yourself. So what is the difference then between an argumentative essay and a discussion essay? In the argumentative essay, you're required to take a stand. You're going to produce formulate a thesis statement that you will defend, not referring to yourself. A discussion essay, on the other hand, presents a question that you will discuss, and it's not until the end that you actually let your reader know what you think. The structures. Do not present any subheadings like argument 1, argument 2, or it's enough to use linking words. That means firstly, secondly, in addition, and so forth, to help your reader follow your thoughts. For an argumentative essay, you need to present a thesis statement in the introduction to allow your reader to know what you will defend. You should begin with an introduction, you end with a thesis statement, and then you present 3 different paragraphs exploring different arguments relating to your thesis statement. In each of these 3 paragraphs, you should include 1 quote each, and also expand your argument like the PEE that I mentioned. Finally, you wrap up with a conclusion that summarizes your arguments and returns to the thesis that you began with to make it easy for your reader to understand what you are going to convince them about. A discussion essay should either have a title as a question, or you present a question in the end of the first paragraph. And the first argument should always introduce logical arguments, because that makes you sound very credible. Use data, use facts, use credible people. And in the argument number 2, it's good that you use an argument from an opponent, which shows that you really know the other side as well. But your side is, of course, better, because you refute it. And argument number 3, use emotional arguments to convey your readers in the end. Appeal to them, make them feel that this is the right way to act. And then you have the conclusion. You make a short summary and you finish with an appeal. And you refer to the question in the beginning and you sort of answer it. And you can do this not by saying, I think you should, but you can say something like, it's quite obvious since many people or many credible people have this opinion. So it's your choice. How then to refute an argument? It says here, a counter-argument is the opposing argument. It disagrees with the writer's opinion, with your opinion. So by including the counter-argument, you show that, well, I have checked the other points of view as well, and you don't agree. And that is where you have the refutation. Because here you show why the counter-argument is weak and why your position is much stronger. It also may refer to doubts that you have about the writer's position, the one that you're referring to, of course, the counter-argument. Here you have the hierarchy of disagreement, and then you see you respond to tone, you have a contradiction, you have a counter-argument, you have a refutation, finding a mistake, supporting it by quoting the author, and finally refuting the central point. you point out a flaw. And this is important that you follow this. Then you know what it is. And as I mentioned the last time we had a webinar, I presented fact versus opinion, and it seemed you all knew the difference. Because a fact is always supported by one or more shreds of evidence. A fact is true and correct no matter where you live or whoever you are. But an opinion, on the other hand, that's very connected to belief or viewpoint, and it's not always validated yet. Here there are some examples with the point. Animals use language to communicate with each other. Okay. Then we have a factual example. And here I have not referred to the researcher, which I should have done. Arctic wolves, for example, communicate the caribou, the presence of caribou through their howls and barks. Other wolves hear the messages and are able to meet their pack to join the hunt. So that's the example that they have used here. How can you interpret this or explain it? Clearly, if another animal can understand vocalized messages that tell the location of the food, then that animal is using language. So you have the point, you have an example, and then you have the evidence, the explanation. I have written interpretation because that is what it's all about. What then is a thesis statement? It's a claim. You will never begin with I will analyze or I will present or so. But it's a fact. Not a fact, sorry, it's a claim. And it directly answers the question of the assignment, of course. You will narrow down the topic, so you will not discuss many things. Try to make it short and simple. Often it's enough with one sentence. And it will tell what you will discuss during the essay, because if you present an argument that is not connected to the actual thesis statement, it's not doesn't belong in the thesis or in the essay. And in the end, you should present it in the introduction, and in the end, you answer it. Here we have what it's not. A thesis statement is not an announcement. I'm going to tell you. Instead, you can say the importance of ABC is blah blah blah. It's not introduced by an opinion phrase such as I think, I feel, I believe. Instead, you could write, you can remove it. Good hygiene begins with the basics of effective washing, hand washing. It's enough. You don't have to add your personal feelings here, or you should not. It's not a statement of fact. George Will writes about economic equality in the United States because we already know that. So it's just facts. It's not a question. What makes a photograph so significant? Well, you should present your position in your topic, and here you opens up for a discussion. So you need to state a photograph and explain why it's significant, what makes a photograph so significant, and then you can mention something. It's not a quote either. As I mentioned before, George Will writes, economic equality is good for the United States. It's his opinion, but it does not clearly express your position, so therefore you cannot use it as a thesis statement. Here is an example written by a student from assignment 2, task 1, where you're going to write your first argumentative essay. And since I want you to be present today, and if you're not, I will not give you the answers here, but could you have a look at this and see where you find the point? First of all, do you find the thesis statement? Do you see the 3 argumentative paragraphs? Can you find the point, the evidence and explanation in each of those 3 paragraphs? And can you see how the student in the end summarizes and draws a conclusion connected to his thesis statement in the beginning? Please do that. It's a very good practice, and we will do that together at the lesson. But if you are occupied, I can understand. Here we have formal language. Beware so that you use linking words. You can look at this one a little bit more, but use quotations. If possible, use impersonal constructions. It is argued, clearly, it's common belief that. So keep detached from the topic. Use an advanced vocabulary. Use sequencing like firstly, secondly, and so forth. However, furthermore, use complex sentences with a variety of links. Make references to other sources. Experts have proven that, but then you need to add which experts, not just generally. You can make generalization in most developed countries, education, blah, blah, blah. And you can use inversions and quotations. What you should avoid is short forms, I'm, it's, and so forth, and colloquial expressions. Gonna, what do you use? Lots of, put up with, or very emotional language. Absolutely detest. Avoid expressing personal opinions too strongly. It seems to me that instead of I know or I think, simplistic vocabulary, avoid that. Experts say, they think, blah, blah, blah. Well, rewrite the sentences. Overgeneralization. All politicians are, because then the one reading will feel like, no, that's not true, because I know a politician who has a totally different point of view here. Refer blindly to statistics. You need to be sure, and you have done this test, or you have done about critical reading. Make sure that you check your sources carefully and avoid personal examples. But here, in this little course here, it's good because Skolverket has got criteria saying that if you can refer to personal knowledge, it doesn't have to be that you have experienced it yourself. But if you have a personal example, for instance, in the cultural clashes assignment, you're free to do that. Avoid simple linking words like and, but, and so forth, unless you want a variety. This is the end of webinar 2, and I wish you the best of luck.